Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for registering for the webinar today. I'm hoping that you all can hear me. Just going to wait another moment while folks join. Just another moment. I'm going to share the link with our presenters. We have two presenters joining us today. Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience while I get sorted in the back end here. Um, so thank you so much for registering for this webinar today and for your interest in the work of the college. Our goal for today is to provide sort of a high-level overview of the work of the college, what it means to be a member of council, and to respond to any specific questions that you might have about the elections process. We're coming up on an election very soon. The nomination period just opened for districts 1, 5, and 6, and we're accepting nominations until May the 1st. So we hope to provide some information here for you today, and also, of course, touch on the DEI work of the CRPO and how that sort of ties into the elections process. So I'd like to begin today with a land acknowledgement to help us to reflect upon the land that we reside. Decolonizing is an ongoing process as we're all virtual. The land on which you live, play, and work will be different. I'm located in Takaranto, now known as Toronto, on the traditional territory of many nations, including Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Today, Toronto is covered under Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum, a treaty made between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee, wherein nations agreed to protect the land and care for its resources together. In West Toronto, where I live, the annual traditional and prescribed burn program occurred at High Park. I believe it was last week. Prior to European settlement, these controlled burns were used by Indigenous peoples to manage and maintain this fire-dependent ecosystem. There are currently, this is an image of High Park, there are currently 399 acres of black oak savanna. For as far back as 4,000 years, this ecosystem was maintained by the original stewards of this land through these controlled fires. The black oak savanna ecosystems are dependent on fire, they contain prairie plants that respond positively to prescribed burning and grow more vigorously than they would in the absence of fire. So I hope that each of you finds the time to connect with the land on which you reside today. Here's a brief agenda to keep us on track today. I went over time the last time that we held this webinar, so I hope to be more concise this time. The purpose, like I said, of this webinar is to provide information and orientation around the role of council, and we'll provide information on the legislation that governs the regulatory colleges, and as well, we'll talk about diversity and inclusion at CRPO. I do have two council members joining me today who will describe a little bit more about council members' roles and provide their perspectives. And we will close off with some questions. So if you have any questions, you can save them to the end. You can always also drop them into the Q&A box through Zoom. I won't be able to get to them immediately, but we will read through any of the questions that we get in the Q&A. So to start off, I'd like to do some introduction. My name is Amy Fournier. I am a governance coordinator at the college, and I primarily support council, the executive committee, nominations and elections, and the DEI working group. And I'm really pleased to have Kafui Sawyer and Michael Mackin joining us today. I'd like to hand it over to Kafui to do a brief introduction.
Thank you, Amy. My name is Kafui Sawyer, and I am a registered psychotherapist. I practice in the Ottawa area. I also work for Health Canada as a trauma consultant. I sit on council representing District 3 East, and I am also a panel chair for the Inquiries and Complaints and Reports Committee, the ICRC. I am also a member of the Elections and Nominations Committee, and I also sit on the Client Relations Committee as well. I am pleased to be doing this work with CRPO, and I am very pleased about the journey we are making in regards to our EDI initiative and mandate for the profession and also for the public. Thank you.
Thanks, Kafui. Michael?
Thank you, Amy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Mackin. I use the pronouns of he and him, and I'm a registered psychotherapist, also a member of council. So I just want to say hello, and I'm so glad that many people are here to find out about the election process and about council. I'm a registered psychotherapist. As I just mentioned, I operate a small private practice or a private practice. I'm a clinical supervisor. And I'm a busy person. I live outside of Ottawa, and I have a small farm, which is an important part of my life. My involvement with council started 4 or 5 years ago. I presently am the chair of the registration committee. I sit as a member of the examination committee. I also am a member of the nominations and elections committee, and I sit on the disciplinary panels, as well as finally, I'm part of the executive as the current vice president. And I'll be pleased to tell you a little bit more about that in a little bit later, but welcome to everyone. And thank you, Amy. And thank you, Kafui.
Thank you both. Okay, with that, I will get started. So what does CRPO Council do. In today's session, we're going to explore the legislation and the sources of authority that the CRPO uses to direct its work. Put simply, the CRPO regulates registered psychotherapists in Ontario with a duty to serve and protect the public interest, this mandate of public protection. As regulators, we have several aspects of diversity to consider: the diversity of the council itself and the committees, the organization, our registrants, and the public. And it puts us in a unique position to address these systemic issues. To fulfill the mandate of regulating in the public interest, the college needs to reflect the communities that it serves and represents. And some ways that the college fulfills its mandate is by maintaining a public register, investigating complaints against RPs, registration and renewal requirements, developing professional practice standards, and ensuring ongoing competence through the quality assurance program. And it's important to note that in every regulated profession, there needs to be a balance of education programs that teach practitioners how to provide care, the professional associations that work in the interest of the healthcare providers, and regulators like the CRPO that work in the interest of the public. And it's by having these three strong corners of the public sector that a safe, excellent healthcare profession can do the work that it does. And we engage with these system partners in several ways. We provide presentations to the education programs and meet regularly with the associations and education programs to provide important updates and engage in that dialogue. So in this first section, I'm going to provide some big picture information about the legislation that governs regulatory colleges and how colleges function. So I have a pyramid graph on this slide demonstrating the hierarchy of the sources of authority that the CRPO uses to direct its work. So at the top, the overarching regulation is the Regulated Health Professions Act. This is the common legislative framework for all regulated health professions in the province. And that's followed by the Profession-Specific Act. So in our case, the Psychotherapy Act. Profession-specific acts protect things like the use of title, they define the scope of practice, and they explicitly state any profession-specific controlled acts that the profession has access to. Next, we have regulations and bylaws, and they're written by College Council. CRPO has 3 regulations currently: the professional misconduct, quality assurance, and registration regulations. And finally, at the bottom of the pyramid, we have the professional practice standards. Development of the standards of practice is a requirement in the RHPA with a focus on items that are rooted in legislation, such as confidentiality, consent, record keeping, and the standards, policies, and guidelines are developed through the work of the committees. So as I noted, at the top of the pyramid is the common legislative framework for all regulated health professions in the province, the RHPA. 26 colleges that are regulating 29 distinct professions, and there are more than 400,000 regulated health professionals in Ontario, with about 13,000 of those being registered psychotherapists. So as I have touched on already, the overall mandate of the RHPA is the duty to serve and protect the public interest. The RHPA itself is very lengthy, detailed, and covers several themes. with some of the major themes highlighted here on this slide. I'll read through them in a moment. Again, you can see the overarching theme of public protection. So accountability to the public, public access, client choice, eradication of sexual abuse, equity, and proactive regulation. There is also a high level of accountability in the RHPA. There's structural accountability via our public members who sit on committees, internal structures, our own governance policies and processes, political accountability to the Minister of Health, and accountability via the appeals process through HPARB. We also have program scrutiny through the Office of the Fairness Commissioner, who looks at our registration processes every year to ensure they're transparent and fair. So Schedule 2 of the RHPA is the Health Professions Procedural Code. This code sets out the more practical rules for colleges. As it says on the slide, it provides a set of rules that health regulatory colleges must follow when registering new members, investigating complaints, and disciplining members of the profession. So the code sets out the more practical rules. And taken together with the RHPA, it might be helpful to summarize the RHPA and the code into 5 broader objectives, which are noted here. And these rules help to ensure that health professional regulation in Ontario is open and accessible and fair to those seeking to become regulated health professionals, for those who are regulated health professionals and are governed by regulatory colleges, and for the patients, clients, and members of the public who the framework is meant to protect. So moving down the pyramid, the Psychotherapy Act 2007, it includes provisions that are specific to the practice of psychotherapy, such as the use of title and scope of practice and any controlled acts that the profession has access to. And with this act, the profession became a regulated health profession in the province of Ontario. Controlled acts themselves are particularly high-risk acts that can cause harm if performed by unqualified persons. Other controlled acts include communicating a diagnosis, prescribing drugs, managing labor, and there are, I believe, 14 defined controlled acts, and RPs in Ontario only have access to the controlled act of psychotherapy. Next, we'll talk about the regulations and bylaws. So CRPO, as I noted at the start, has 3 regulations: the professional misconduct, quality assurance, and registration regulations. Generally speaking, regulations can be categorized as follows. So a restrictive regulation, such as an entry to practice or registration regulation, a reactive regulation, such as professional misconduct, and proactive regulation via our quality assurance regulation. The regulation making process itself can be quite lengthy. It can take months or years for a regulation to be approved by cabinet. And because it has to go through this very specific process, and government approval is why it can take quite a long time. And I'm going to speak to the bylaws next. So this flow chart here illustrates the bylaw making or the bylaw changing process. Bylaws are often circulated for public consultation for 60 days, and they deal mainly with internal administrative matters like banking, finance, signing contracts. Also, the bylaws detail the election process. They detail the electoral districts, the eligibility of candidates and voters, the term of office, and so on. The bylaws also tell us about committee composition, conflict of interest, confidentiality, fees, and the code of conduct. So they are relevant to members of council in that they direct how professionals participate in committee and council work. So finally, we're at the bottom of the pyramid, the hierarchy, and standards, policies, and guidelines. Council develops and monitors regulations, policies, and business systems for the CRPO. And policies are a primary tool for council to direct the college and protect the public, and sets out expectations of practitioners that are meant to enhance public protection. Typically, policies address either recurring areas of challenge for practitioners, such as record keeping, scope of services, confidentiality, and privacy, or emerging areas of priority like the use of social media, the use of technology, promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion. And to ensure that our policies are relevant and helpful, they're developed through a rigorous process at the committee level. So lots of discussion happening at the committee level. So this all taken together brings us to how the college regulates using the framework that is established in the Regulated Health Professions Act. The CRPO establishes those registration and renewal requirements, develops the standards of practice, and promotes ongoing competence through professional development, and also investigates complaints against registered psychotherapists. In 2019, I believe, Council developed a set of regulatory objectives to accompany the strategic plan. Establishing these objectives allows a regulator to demonstrate how they work in the public interest. Any stated objectives also support accountability within a right touch approach to regulating. So if an initiative can't be measured against one of the regulatory objectives that are noted on this slide, then it should likely not be undertaken. So when it comes to the CRPO's approach to regulation, we have adopted this right touch framework that was developed by the Professional Standards Authority in the UK. This approach is not overly prescriptive. It supports professionals in using their expert clinical judgment to act in the client's best interest. And the goal of right touch is to use the appropriate regulatory tool with the understanding that the least amount of regulatory force is the prime objective. And this applies to developing registration renewal requirements, developing practice standards, all of those areas that I've talked about, ensuring competence through the QA program, etc. Right touch regulation also means understanding the problem before jumping to the solution, and it makes sure that the level of regulation is proportionate to the level of risk to the public. And on my next slide, I just have 8 elements that sit at the heart of right touch regulation: identifying the problem before the solution, quantifying and qualifying risks, focusing on outcomes, and so on. So the CRPO works to attract, retain, and develop competent and diverse council and committee members. A diverse council that includes people of all genders, races, ages, sexual orientation, cultural backgrounds, level of ability, considers a wide variety of perspectives, and ultimately more informed decisions. This is a priority for CRPO. We hope to promote an inclusive and safe environment for discussion and deliberation to foster DEI. And oops, sorry, back a couple. So over the last couple of years, the CRPO has completed 4 callouts for non-council appointments to serve on various statutory committees and working groups. We have almost 40 non-council appointments serving on these committees and working groups at the moment. So we have been making efforts to foster diversity in this way through non-council appointments. And we're aware that council diversity is an issue, and there is work to be done to promote the nomination and election of diverse candidates. We certainly welcome candidates who are not only knowledgeable and skilled and experienced, but folks who would enhance the diversity of council to cultivate that wide range of perspectives and experiences. So as I alluded to in some of the earlier slides, the majority of the work of council is done at the committee level, and registrants who are elected to council are also appointed to serve on about 2 to 3 committees, depending on the committee workload and the needs of the committees, and of course the council members' areas of expertise. So committees do the work involved in developing and drafting policies, guidelines, standards, and once these documents are finalized, they're then presented to council. So CRPO has 7 statutory committees, which means that they're created by legislation and have a legal function. So the RHPA says that these 7 committees have to exist. We have client relations, discipline, executive, fitness to practice, inquiries, complaints, and reports, also called the ICRC, quality assurance, and registration. And we also have 2 standing or non-statutory committees, the examination committee and the nominations and elections committee. We also currently have 2 working groups. The DEI working group currently has 15 RPs. All are non-council appointees. No council members sit on this working group. And we also have the professional practice working group, which consists of committee chairs and members of the public. So as I noted in previous slides, it is important to have council and committee members who reflect a wide variety of knowledge and skills and lived experiences. And part of that includes the promotion of election and nomination of diverse candidates, and in turn helping to ensure that that individuals do feel involved in the college work and feel welcomed and appreciated to contribute. Some current DEI working group initiatives are noted on the slide. I'll go through some of these highlights. The DEI working group recently developed the data set for self-identification information and directing council around the collection and the management of that data. So that was approved by council in September, and the working group is just finalizing their work on communications aspect of that. They have also been advising on the implementation of an equity impact assessment tool to evaluate our DEI processes and contributing to the development of DEI specific standards of practice. So that is something that they are currently working on. The DEI working group also supporting the work needed to redevelop an Indigenous pathway to registration. And the working group is also working with the ICRC and council to respond to a trauma-informed review of conduct-related processes. In December, our council was presented with a report related to the trauma-informed review that was conducted regarding our complaints process. That's also posted on our website for those who are interested. And finally, the equitable remuneration for professional counsel and committee members. This item was approved at the March council meeting. The council did approve the increase to per diem attendance rates for any RPs who participate on committees, working groups, and identify as equity deserving communities or serving equity deserving communities. So that was approved at the last council meeting. So now I'm going to invite Michael and Kafui, our two current professional members, to speak about their experiences on council, what led them to get involved, any challenges that they've faced in their role as council members, and also to maybe give you a sense of the amount of time that they spend on their council duties. So I don't know, Kafui, would you like to start?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm happy to see you again, Michael. It's always lovely to do this with you. Yeah, so Amy had sent us some questions ahead of time to make sure that we cover what may be important to you. So what do I enjoy most about my role as a council member? I enjoy the wonderful, I would say, cohesiveness we have on our council, the respectful conversations and dialogues that we engage in, especially when we have to make decisions that impact the profession and the public. I think for me, it's always important to feel respected and to feel heard, just like any one of you would like to. And so I think that camaraderie and the space that we share together has been a very positive experience for me. I also think that one of the things I also enjoy the most is also the staff. The ability to work well side by side with the staff has been very helpful in my role in the complaints committee. It's been wonderful to work alongside with our the chair for the ICRC, Kali, and I know Kali's not a staff member, but it's just wonderful to work with people like Kali and other staff members like Jenna and the whole team, the complaints team. And also my colleagues on my panel. It's just been a very respectful and rewarding and enriching, very meaningful experience. And I think I'm growing in my own development as a therapist as well. You get to hear other sides of a perspective that you probably may not have even thought about. So I think I appreciate that process and my own personal growth in this journey. What led me to get involved with the CRPO Council? First of all, as you all see, I am Black, and there's not a lot of us in the profession. We're not very represented in the profession of psychotherapy. And so I really wanted to make sure that we had other voices. And I was also representing my Black community in terms of how we live our own culture, our perspectives. And I was also concerned as to the low representation of Black people accessing psychotherapy services. And to me, this is a public mandate. It's a public protection issue because I do recognize that people within the Black community actually also need to be able to access services. And so I wanted to see what are some of the barriers that are getting in the way of people within my community. I also come into the profession with a lot of experience and knowledge working in different cities and provinces across Canada. So I have worked in New Brunswick and British Columbia, and now in Ontario. I also provide consultation services to Quebec. So I thought it would be helpful for the CRPO Council to be able to look at different perspectives as to how things are working in other provinces, and how we can actually align some of the things that are going well in these provinces. So I come into this with a wider range of, I would say, skill set. And I just thought I would like to offer that and participate in a joint process in moving our college's regulatory mandate forward in a way that actually helps the communities we serve. How much time do you spend per month on CRPO council duties? That was the next question. So I have been on ICRC for the past 4 years. So I joined in as a non-council member and decided to run for elections last year or 2 years ago. Yeah, I think it was last year. And so I joined the council last year, and I knew very well that I was going into it trying to represent the important aspects of the profession, and also a public mandate for the people we serve in our region, so the Ottawa and surrounding areas. And I have as a clinical director for my own private practice, I think it was important for me to be able to allocate how much time I was going to give to this project or this commitment. And so I actually just stayed in areas that I know I actually can commit to. So the ICRC is something I'm very passionate about. I'm interested in making sure that we are being fair, we're being equitable and inclusive in the decisions we make that impact the well-being of the public, as well as our colleagues in the profession. And so I am happy to state that we only meet bi-monthly for the most part. We have our next meeting in May. It's May the 16th, and then the next one I believe is on July 11th. And when we come before the panel, we expected to actually commit a full day when we have a lot of cases. So we're looking at 9:30 to 3:30. So a full day to be able to sit and deliberate with my colleagues. But prior to that, there's also preparation time, which is also another full day. So pretty much you're looking at, in terms of the ICRC, you're looking at least 15 hours bi-monthly to commit to this process. As a chair, of course, of one of the panels, I do spend more time, because as you know, I'm probably going to have to spend more time as a chair on the panel, so that I can lead my group well. So I usually would say bi-monthly I give about 20 hours of my time. And I think it's rewarding. It's rewarding. It's actually very good for my own personal growth, as well as my responsibility to society. We all have a responsibility to society, and giving back is a very important one. And it also helps our community growth as well. What challenges have I faced in my role as a CRPO council member? I think one of the things I have faced in terms of challenges would be learning to really hear some of the voices of other people. I feel like we're missing the voices of other representations on our council. And so for me, it's not about what's current, it's about what we don't have. I would like to see some diversity in our council membership, and that's why I'm actually participating in today's webinar. I think it'll be important to feel like we have an openness that is inclusive of all people. So that has been a major passion of mine, to make sure that I am creating a culture of inclusivity. And that is going to always be a challenge because our systems have been working a certain way for a very long time. And so I think that would be the only challenge for me in terms of being I would say on the forefront with making sure that we are thinking inclusively, we're thinking equitably, we're thinking diversity. And they're not supposed to be challenges, but they are just because of the kinds of systems we have. So yeah, I will leave it as that. I belong to other committees as well, but the work there is not as much. I do sit on the disciplinary committee as well, but I don't spend a lot of time there as much as I do with the ICRC. With the Nominations and Elections Committee, I just want to say very briefly, probably maybe 2 hours, and that is maybe a meeting in 3 months or 4 months, whenever we can get together. So there's not a lot of time commitment that if you are not passionate, if you're passionate about, you would feel like this is something you're just giving back. So I just invite all of you to consider being inclusive in this process so that we can create a regulatory college that actually supports everyone and also thinks about the well-being of the public. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kafui. Michael?
Thank you. And I really do appreciate having this opportunity. I think back as I was listening to Kafui chat about when I first became involved in council, and we didn't have this opportunity to have a webinar and learn information. And especially, this may sound a bit conceited, but to actually hear from people who actually were involved in council and find out what's the experience like. So I'm really proud to be able to share with you what my experience has been like in answering these same questions that Kafui has told us about. I think it's really important information in order for each one of you that have taken the time out today to come to this webinar to then have additional information from the people that are involved in it on a day-to-day basis, as members of council and members of other committees. So the first question or first comments I have then is about what do I enjoy as in terms of my role as council member. Then I really smile and applaud all the things that Kafui also has mentioned. But similarly, then what I take away from and what I enjoy most is having a purpose. There's a meaningfulness of the work that we do as council members, being involved with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario. The public protection mandate is something that has been a great deal of learning for me, but it's something I can be really proud of, that I'm involved in a college that is, has an infrastructure in place that ultimately has a goal to protect the public. And so it's a very meaningful experience for me, as well as, and building on what Kafui said, then there is in all groups of people that we work with, there's always an opportunity to make connection and with others, and not every organization perhaps is successful at it. I believe that the college has taken it seriously, and we've been able to develop a connection between people, which is a human, a social being, a human need that we all have. And I enjoy that connection of getting to know people, of what their lives are like outside of council, and certainly then understanding how they participate in council, and myself. What led me to get involved in the council? It was a recommendation of a colleague of mine that said, "Hey, there's a position available," and so District 8 was available at the time when I ran for election, and I ran a successful election. I, will admit that I wasn't necessarily someone that would have been naturally oriented towards the college in terms of being a quote unquote regulator. I had always been involved in the CCPA, the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association, as an advocate or as a person looking at the things to support psychotherapists in terms of training and advocacy. And that's really where I kind of thought that my world would be, not realizing there was a door waiting to open for me. And then 4 years ago, then this opportunity came available. And I have to say, I'm really, really pleased that it actually has been that way. And so I got involved early on and have continued with my involvement. And now it feels like there's a significant involvement, which then leads to the next thing to comment on in terms of, what's the time frame for involvement. I am involved in a lot of stuff, and now as being part of executive and actually vice president, then as well as chairing the registration committee and sitting on the examination committee, and I do 2 or 3 days a month. As Kafui alluded to, and I believe that I get as much out of it as I put into it. There is lots of preparation. I can remember the first registration committee meeting I went to. I think there was 10,000 pages of information that I was given to review. You get really good at managing information when we're in these types of roles. But the time frame, I had to readjust my schedule a little bit in order to make it make sense, and that I've been able to do. And it's time well spent is my message for that. And then finally, looking at challenges that I've faced in my role. So 2 things come to mind. The first one is I might have thought, at least part of me did, that perhaps my involvement with CRPO was going to be to represent the voice of the registered psychotherapist. And I needed to learn, and the challenge and instead of it being a challenge, I have 2 learning points that I would like to share. So the learning point was simply that I needed to learn that my role wasn't to be the voice of the registered psychotherapist, but it was really to be, for me, from my perspective, to be to fulfill the public protection mandate of the college. And interestingly enough, I go to a place that if I do or the council does a good job of protecting the public, then that actually includes doing a good job of supporting psychotherapists. So I think that one leads to another. The other challenge or growth area for me was I identify as a gay man, and I had some challenges in the early days. Was that part of me going to be welcome at the college? And the easy thing to say is it is. There is no reason that I feel anything but being welcomed as a gay person sitting on the council, and I can lean into that experience as I need to, and feel that it is welcomed around the table at executive and or at council meetings and registration committee or any of the committees I'm involved in. It feels like a place, if we can say CRPO is a place, but it feels like an experience rather that is welcoming. I know that we're growing and learning and understanding what we need to do for diversity, equity, and inclusion, but I'm pleased to be part of this and feel comfortable in my skin. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Kafui. Such valuable information, great perspectives. I have 10 minutes to wrap this up. I think I can do it. I'm going to speak very briefly about, Kafui and Michael spoke about their roles as council members, as committee members, as contributors, and I'm going to speak about the registrar and the president. So the registrar, partnered with council, ensures that the college's mission, vision, and strategic plan are implemented. And the registrar also ensures that the college's mandate of public protection is being fulfilled. The registrar is council's official link to the day-to-day operations of the college and its staff, and the performance of the registrar is synonymous with council's performance. The registrar also effectively manages staff to deliver the objectives of council and fulfills its role as a regulator. The registrar also helps to foster relationships with government, associations, other regulators, all of our system partners. And the president's role is also a leadership role that is defined in our bylaws. The president is elected by council for a term of office of 1 year. Similarly to the registrar, the president demonstrates leadership, leading by example, supporting council and non-council members by listening to any concerns that they have, offering coaching or encouragement. The president also facilitates council and executive committee meetings by preparing the agendas and ensuring that sufficient supporting materials are provided, and of course, ensuring that accurate minutes are recorded for those meetings. The president and the registrar are the official spokespersons for the CRPO, and this is to offer more consistent messaging. So they are more or less the face of the communications with registrants, the government, and any of our system partners. The link between council and the registrar and the president is the sort of point of contact for all council members. And although both roles, of course, are very important, they have no individual authority, and the president only implements the decisions that are made by council and ensures that the policies and strategic plan are implemented and managed effectively. As far as council's role is concerned, it's important to remember that, council and staff, it's important to remember in any organization where governance is divided from operations, there does need to be a healthy fence between staff and council members. And part of what that means is that in order to function well, council members need to steer or set the course of the organization, and staff members need to row or do the work of how to get there. And another part of what this means is there needs to be a healthy fence between council members and staff. Staff need to be trusted to do their work effectively based on this big picture vision that is created by council, and council needs to be supported by staff to do their jobs effectively. And it's also why we ask members of council and committees to work through the appropriate channels of communication, using common sense to determine if a matter can be addressed by staff, by the panel chair, the president, whoever is most appropriate. Fiduciary duties. A large part of board member roles involve fiduciary obligations, this undivided loyalty to the regulator and to its mandate. And part of this duty is appropriately dealing with conflicts of interest as they arise, keeping all documents confidential, and engaging in appropriate conduct as a council member with diligence and respect. As Michael and Kafui both mentioned, preparing for meetings is a large part of that fiduciary duty. Professional members are eligible to claim expenses for a per diem for their meeting preparation and meeting attendance for any of the work that they do that is related to their committees. And one of the most fundamental fiduciary duties is that council and committee members cannot act in a conflict of interest. A conflict of interest arises when a council or committee member has a competing consideration that could reasonably affect their ability to make a decision based solely on the public interest mandate of the regulator. So conflict of interest is certainly something that comes up at every meeting. It's on every agenda, so it is something at the front of our minds in terms of duties. The code of conduct applies to all members of council and committees. It is an appendix to our bylaws, and some pieces that the code of conduct includes is paying attention and being prepared, requiring genuine listening and consideration, not making up your mind before arriving, preserving confidentiality, and declaring conflicts of interest. Council competencies, very quickly, CRPO developed a set of competencies for council members and a set for committee members, as well as a matrix that directs the composition of those committees. So the college uses these matrices to identify a mix of skills and experience that are needed for good decision-making in the public interest. And as part of the nomination process, candidates are required to complete a competency self-assessment to provide, and this should provide you with the opportunity to highlight any of the skills knowledge and experience that you have that might enhance the college's mandate. Finally, time commitment and remuneration. Both Michael and Kafui spoke to this earlier, but broadly speaking, most committees meet for plenary meetings about 2 to 4 times a year. They're typically full day meetings. They're held virtually. Committee members also participate in panels, and these panels also meet for a half or a full day, about bi-monthly, as Kafui mentioned. For each half or full day meetings, as I mentioned, you can be compensated for an honoraria. I also noted that the per diem attendance per diem for folks from equity deserving communities was recently approved by council. So that is an option for professional members who sit on council and committees. And sorry, I want to get all the information I can in. I don't want to miss anything. And finally, any registrants who are involved with council can count their time that they spend for their PD requirements. And I'd also just note that from a staff perspective, we're acutely aware that council and committee work is over and above what registrants do in their professional and personal lives. And we do aim to support as much as we can to make sure that members are able to participate in public protection in a way that feels meaningful and net positive to them as professionals. We don't always get it totally right, but we really do have a healthy collaborative culture. We do regular evaluations of how things are going and use feedback to work together more effectively. So we do have an election cycle open right now. If you're primarily practicing in one of these districts, you may be eligible. This is just to summarize the 6 sections that are in the nomination package. If you have any questions or need support working through this nomination package, it's on our website. You can contact elections@crpo.ca. Happy to walk you through that. And a few dates to note: the deadline to submit the nomination is May 1st at noon. And if we require an election, then the online election will open for voting on the 16th of May, and the last day to vote would be May 31st. The terms will begin immediately following the election. And I don't know if I noted this before, but folks are elected for a 3-year term. And that is the end of our presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at elections@crpo.ca, or you can email my personal email address. That's fine too. And you can find lots of information. We just added an FAQ section on our website, crpo.ca/council elections. So thank you so much to Kafui Sawyer and Michael Mackin today. It's always such a pleasure to host these with you. We've been through a couple now. Always appreciate seeing your faces and hearing what you have to say. So thank you so much. And yes, if you need anything, please send us an email, and we hope to see you submitting your nomination package.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.